Yeah.
Ruchem Aboim B'Shem Hashem. Shem Egen Shir. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's shir from Rabbi Yakov Smith Shlita, the topic of Shir Kloli B'Dini Kovod Sefer Torah. Papa Kovod for a Sefer Torah. To have the great exclusive sponsoring a shir call Egen Shir Torah 718-851-8651 or email ist@yeshivanet.com. Harav Smith.
We heard a shayla, someone wanted to go to the mountains for Shabbos, and he had a minyan, but there's no Sefer Torah. Is it a chatchila to bring a Sefer Torah from the city, transport it, to use it only once or twice? Of course, for mincha they'll use it again. And there were other such shaylas about moving a Sefer Torah. We had a shayla where Sefer Torah was found to be psul, and you bring a Sefer Torah from a different shul. You have to go to that shul and avoid transporting a Sefer Torah. Someone was by a chanasa Sefer Torah, and he noticed they didn't bring the other Sifrei Torah out to greet the new Sefer Torah. So he felt that was an avla. How could you not do it? But then again, some places, well, you're not supposed to move a Sefer Torah, even for chanasa Sefer Torah. So I felt it was appropriate to go through the sugya of Kovod for the Sefer Torah, primarily moving a Sefer Torah, which, as we'll soon see, might be considered a bezoyin, and to learn the halachos of the Kovod Sefer Torah. And the truth is, at first glance, we wonder, what's wrong with bringing a Sefer Torah to the mountains? I'm going to use it. Isn't that what the Sefer Torah is made for? You know, especially in the olden days, with the pasuk was done, the chiyuv was done. Va'at kisvu lechem as hashir hazois. People wrote their own Sifrei Torah. They had it in their house. They used it. So shouldn't the Sefer Torah be used? Adarabah, the more you use it, the better it is. Why shouldn't the halacha be that you're allowed to move a Sefer Torah to use it whenever necessary? That's certainly one way of looking at it. The Sefer Torah is for our use. But then again, there's a totally different way of looking at it. And that is, of course you use the Sefer Torah. You go to shul, you listen to laning, and shalom al Yisrael. If you want to have a Shabbos in the mountains, you bring the Sefer Torah for your convenience, for your situation. No, you go to the Sefer Torah. Who said the Sefer Torah has to come to you? So this is our question. Moving a Sefer Torah for use, is it a mitzvah or is it a bezayin? L'chayra, and I stress l'chayra because we'll soon see, there is a Gemara, both Bavli and Yishalmi, but Pashtus, there's no beferish Gemara about this shayla of moving a Sefer Torah. But there is a Chuvas Maram Rutenberg in Prague, Simon Chav Gimel, and the Mordechai in Rosh Hashanah quotes it. And listen to this tremendous chiddush, or maybe a tremendous pashtus. There are people in jail. We'll soon see it's not a minyan, but there are a few yidden in jail. It's not just for a weekend of vacation in the bungalow. These are yidden that are stuck in jail, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. They would love to have a minyan with the Sefer Torah. And Zog Tamar Rutenberg, you're not allowed to bring a Sefer Torah to them. Now, I want to say, this is not criminals who don't deserve a Sefer Torah. These, in those days, Nebuch, people, Erlach Yid, ended up in jail. And it's ironic, Tamar Rutenberg himself, as we know, was in jail. The Vilna Gaon was in jail. The Rav Shechanach, there were Sheina Yidden in jail for no reason, no fault of their own. But whatever the case is, it's not because it's the bezoyin of being in jail. Ram Rutenberg held you're not allowed to move a Sefer Torah even to service people in jail. Now what's his makar? He bases it on a Yishalmi. The Yishalmi is in Yuma at the beginning of 7th parak and Soita Vav Zayin, where the Yishalmi makes a very simple statement. B'chol makoim, b'chol asar, at hoylech achat Torah. The understandable way of looking at it is you go to the Sefer Torah, but you don't deliver Sefer Torah to you. The point is, it's a sensitivity in Kovod Sefer Torah. You want to hear laning? Go to the Sefer Torah. Now, a dogma, I remember many times I saw in our camp, Rabbi Kamenetsky spent the summer with us. So when the Shliach Tzibah would hold the Sefer Torah, would go when May Gadlu, before going to the Bima, he would go to bring the Sefer Torah, so Rabbi could kiss the Sefer Torah. And every time he got upset. No, I go to you. Don't bring the Sefer Torah to me, right? You walk, you want to Sefer Torah, go to the Sefer Torah. Understandable. It's like a gadol is happy to do sandikoyis. Bring the baby to my house. I can't go to you. So this is the assumption regarding a Sefer Torah. Even if it's needed, but go to the Sefer Torah, you can't bring it to you. In jail, they would love to go, but you're not allowed, you can't leave the jail. So you know what the answer is? If you're an Einus, no, Einus of a Patre. But you can't be Mavaza Sefer Torah to bring the Sefer Torah to people. The Sefer Torah, you go to the Sefer Torah, not Fakert. This is one way of looking at it. And the emissaries, the Marketzia, we'll soon see in Simon, the end of Kuf Lamed Hey, granted today's Simon is Kuf Lamed Hey, he quotes a Zoya in 2 places that says when you move a Sefer Torah, the Sefer Torah is in Golus. And it's very understandable. The Minik HaGra, in quoted in Ma'aser Rav, in Simon Kuf Chav Tes, is very machmir. By laning, even to bring a Sefer Torah from one room to the second room is awesome. Why? Because that's the Bezayin of the Sefer Torah. And this is the Psak of the Shulchan Aruch in 2 places, in Orach Chaim, the end of Kuf Lamed Hey in the Ramah, and in Tov Kuf Pei Daled Gimel, where twice the Shulchan Aruch says to move a Sefer Torah even for a Shana Yom Kippur, so Yidden could hear the laning, is awesome. And the emphasis, this is always ingrained in the Yiddish emotion, you don't move a Sefer Torah. I'll give you a dugma or two. The famous Tosfos Yom Tov's Kash in the beginning of Megillah, who asks, we lost 3 precious mitzvahs because you might come to carry. We don't do Shofar on Shabbos, Lulav on Shabbos, and Megillah on Shabbos in Eretz Yisrael. So the Tosfos Yom Tov asks his famous Kasha, why don't we say not to lane on Shabbos? Because you might have a shayla and run to the Rav. Now some people would like that, but it's not the minig. We do lane on Shabbos. What's with the Kasha? He might come to carry. Zok the Marsham in Chelik Vav Simon Dalid. No one's going to schlep a Sefer Torah in the street on Shabbos. We don't carry Sifrei Torah, even during the week. So he's using our sensitivity. There's no gezer. You might come to carry in the street because you don't carry a Sefer Torah in the street. The Das Kedoshim in the beginning of Simon Reish Pei Beis in Yeridea, in fact, he even has a shayla. Let's say you have a suffix in the Sefer Torah, and the Rav can see it clearly. To bring it outside, of course, on Shabbos with an Erev or on Yom Tiv, to bring it outside under the sun, he says, Sarchin Ladina. You don't move a Sefer Torah for no reason. And how much was written about the minik some have, that women want to hear Parsha Zach and they can't come to shul, so they take out a Sefer Torah just for lane Zacha for women. Some place can object. You don't move a Sefer Torah unless there's a very real need. And the laning of the Nesiim during the 12 days of Nisan, many people take out a Sefer Torah after davening, and some say don't take out a Sefer Torah after laning. Mishit, but you don't schlep a Sefer Torah if it can be avoided. The whole minig of laning Mishta Torah on a Shana Rabbah, some question it. Now, of course, the minig is, and all these things were makel, but the point is we don't, l'chatchila, we avoid moving a Sefer Torah even in the same room. Kolshkein to move it to a different location. Sefer Torah is probably the most precious item on this planet Earth. You don't just move it unless there's a very real need. And there's a lot to say, but suffice the words of the Mechaben Yeridei Reish Pei Bei Sif Aleph, Chayiv Adam Linoig Kovod Gadol b'Sefer Torah. You have to have a tremendous covet for the Sefer Torah. And his lashon is, you should sit b'Kovod Roish, b'Yira, b'Pachad, so Eid Aneman al Kol Boi Oilam, Shenem V'Hoyesham B'Chol Eid. You think about it, these my feelings at least about this question. Throughout the generation the Torah was given, millions of Yidden were Meiseh Nefesh, in Shabbos and Kashrus and Mominis and Midas Toivais, all because it's Azoy State in our Torah. How many billions of hours was spent learning every koitz and tag of Torah? Now there's no police, there's no enforcement, there's no KGB, there's no CIA, there's no alarm, there's no cameras. You look at the Torah and you know what to do. Like a Baruch Mavavitz once said, he picked up a chumash Is there any book in the world that every word is emes lamitoy? No. And that's how we say Sefer Torah. It's the derech hachayim for millions of Yidden throughout Golas, and there's no police enforcing it because there's a kedusha to that Sefer Torah. And that's why we understand that you have to treat it with the greatest respect. Now, one way of respect is understanding that kol kfuda bas melech pnima, a certain pnimius, lefnayu lefnim. In a world of chitzonius, like what's the big deal? Forget it. Everything is outdoors and everything is pearsum and everything is publicity. But we know the true kovod is tznius, hatznei alechas. So to schlep a Sefer Torah, to bring it from place to place, is the very opposite of kovod HaTorah. And that's definitely pshat in the Magen Rutenberg. To move a Sefer Torah is not allowed. He wants to hear laning? No, if he's an oynis Rachmana Patri. But that's not the end of the story. Because besides the Magen Rutenberg and the Mordechai that asked, there's also two Gedolei Rishonim that are mekel. The Arza Ruah in Hilchas Krishma Siman Tes, he says if a person can't come to davening, so if he's up to it, bring a minyan to his house. V'imhu adam chashav be'irai, bring a Sefer Torah to his house as well. And this is quoted in Agoyis Ashri and Brachas Perik Aleph, Siman Zayin, that you're allowed to bring a Sefer Torah to an Adam Chashav. The Rishalmi, if you want to argue on Magen Rutenberg, it's fine. You can argue on the Rishalmi. So not only they didn't forget the Rishalmi, understandably so, but they bring a raya from the Rishalmi that for an Adam Chashav you're allowed to bring a Sefer Torah. What's the raya? Because the same Rishalmi, after it says the derech is you go to the Sefer Torah, you don't bring the Sefer Torah to you, the Rishalmi asks the kasha. We find in Masechta Yuma that part of the avodah Yom Kippurim, they would bring a Sefer Torah to the Kohen Gadol, and they would lay it for him. You don't bring a Sefer Torah to a Yachid. Zakti Yushalmi, Al Yidei Shein Bnei Adam Gedolim, HaTorah Mis'ala Bohem. It's true, bringing a Sefer Torah on a regular basis is wrong. But if you bring it to a chash of a person, that's Kovod HaTorah. That's you show how important the Torah is. We have to bring it to a Kohen Gadol. Zokt the Arza Ruah. So bazoi, when someone is stuck in jail and he's an oynis and he very much wants to hear the laning, that's also included in the het of Kovod HaTorah. So our shayla that we began with, is it a mitzvah to bring a Sefer Torah or bazoyin? Now you see is a machlokes rishonim. The Magen Rutenberg and the Mordechai held it's asa. If you can't, it's oynis. The Arza Ruah and the Goyis Ashri said that's Kovod HaTorah to use it. Now, what's taka the hezber for Talmid Chacham it's mutter? So I'll tell you another chakira like we began with, a different chakira. Is the pshat that bringing a Sefer Torah generally is a bazoyin, but for a Talmid Chacham, it's not a bazoyin, it's a kovod. So you don't need a heta. Or probably the heta might be that really bringing a Sefer Torah is a bazoyin period. But for a Talmid Chacham who needs it, you overlook a little bit of bazoyin HaTorah for Kovod HaTorah. And we'll soon see an afkamina. Now, the only thing I want to point out is Magen Rutenberg held it's asa to bring a Sefer Torah, period. Why is it mutter for a Kohen Gadol? So that the Achrayim say, he was a very special person. He was the representative of Gans Klal Yisrael, and such a person you're allowed to bring a Sefer Torah. But Rabbi said, let's be clear. Everybody agrees with the words of the Yishalmi, you go to the Sefer Torah. That is the general attitude. The question is, if there's a very special need of a Talmid Chacham who needs a Sefer Torah, that's a machlokes gedolei harishonim. How do we paskin? So as I told you, the Shulchan Aruch, the Mechaber in two places, does not recognize any heta. He says, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, don't bring a Sefer Torah. And taka for Svardim, it's not pasha to move a Sefer Torah. Rabbi Yankiv Emdin and Marketzia, as I told you, quotes two places of the Zoya that says it's an oynish chama to move a Sefer Torah. You can't subject the Sefer Torah to Golis because of your need. The Goyin, as I told you, was very machma, even cheda l'cheda. And that's why there's definitely an attitude in the Paiskim not to move a Sefer Torah even when it's needed. The Orchos Chaim, the Spinkin, and Sivkot and Tezayin, he says if people would see what the Zohar writes to Einish and moving a Sefer Torah, they wouldn't be so quick to move it. The starting point is because it's a Bezoyin. However, the Ramah does recognize the het of Adam Chashiv, V'himu Adam Chashiv, B'chol Inyan Shari. Why is it mutter? Like I told you, either the pshat is for Talmid Chacham, it's not a Bezoyin, or if it's needed, a little Bezoyin is sanctionable. And God, I saw the Beis Sharim and Simon Mem Zayin says the Chakir that I told you, the two pshat understand why it's mutter for Talmid Chacham. But what's interesting, the Magen Avram in Sifkot and Chav Gimel quotes the Ramah Darkei Moshe that says that if you look closely at the Lashon of Zarua, he's really saying two heterim. One het is Talmid Chacham, and one het is for an Einis. In other words, even if he's not a Talmid Chacham, an Einis and someone in jail, it's okay. But the Agois Ashri seems the only het is when you have both start be makel. Talmid Chacham, who's stuck in jail or in a hospital. But for a regular person who's an Einis, there's no heta. What's the machlokes Talhian? Our Chakira. If the heta is that there's no the reason why there's mutter because it's not a bezoyin for Talmid Chacham, then you take a need. Then either heta is good, either a Talmid Chacham or an Einis. But if the heta is that it's a bezoyin ebach, but you have to be makel. You can only be makel for a Talmid Chacham, and we'll soon apply this more specifically. But the point is that we have to realize that the Sefer Torah should not be transported. Maybe for a Talmid Chacham, maybe for an Einis, there's a heta, and we'll soon apply this more specifically. But I want to make a point that really is important to mention. The whole yisoid of this chumrah is based on the Rishalmi. Frekte Pri Chodesh, a very logical question. The case of the Yishalmi was not someone in jail, was a Kohen Gadol. Now you have to realize the Kohen Gadol had an option. Either stay in Beis HaMikdash and bring the Sefer Torah to me, or maybe he should go to the Sefer Torah. Then we say, moving a Sefer Torah is wrong. The notable exception is for a Kohen Gadol you're allowed to. But Frekte Pri Chodesh, a very innocent question. Let's say you have a Yid, not a Talmid Chacham, an Erlich Yid who never missed Tefillah B'tzib in his life. Now this Shabbos he's never stuck home and he's sick. He's more sick about missing laning than the sickness. But he's an Einis. The end of the day has no choice. He cannot go to shul. Who said that's us in the first place? True, Ram Rutenberg and the Mordechai answered, but the Raya from the Yishalmi is not a Raya. Maybe when there's no choice, the Yishalmi would agree. Now he's not, of course he's not saying Ram Rutenberg agrees, but at least the Yishalmi would agree. But he writes, L'nyan dina tzarchian. But it's a good taina. We don't see from the Yishalmi that if an Einis is awesome. We see from the Yishalmi that a Kohen Gadol that has a choice, we allow him to bring the Sefer Torah, but not by an Einis. And the Chafetz Chaim also has this analysis in the Bialacha, in our Simon Ein Mavian. He says, I don't understand the Chumrah of the Shulchan Aruch. If someone's an Einis, so maybe you're allowed to bring Sefer Torah from him. And he says, an Einis we don't see from the Yishalmi. In other words, he doesn't understand why the Mechab was so makel. And he says, and then he adds that the Svara of the Makilim, the Arzarua, and the Agois Ashri that were makel is this very Yisoid. If someone's never Cha'ainis, he has no choice, bring it to him. But then he adds, he says, Oy Bazoi, someone in jail, or a hospital, or a Chayil at home. If he's an Einis, we have a good svara to rely on the Ramah. But then he says an interesting chilik. And he says, maybe even the machmirim that were machmir by a chayla or a person in jail was only when it's yechidim in jail without a minyan. So now let's reanalyze this situation. You have 3 people in jail or 5 people in a hospital, and should you bring a Sefer Torah and a few people, because you can't land with less than a minyan. So then we could say, why bring a Sefer Torah and create a chiyuv? Right now, there's no chiyuv laning. A yach is no chiyuv laning. So you want to be from and bring a minyan and bring a Sefer Torah? Be more from by Kovod Sefer Torah and keep as it is. But let's say you have an existing minyan of cholim in a hospital or people in jail. They have a halachos chiyuv of laning. Maybe even the Shulchan Aruch would agree, because the Ram Rutenberg's case, the Mechaber's case is b'nei adam less than a minyan, and the Chofetz Chaim is confident to be makel when there's a minyan that needs a Sefer Torah, and we'll soon see how crucial this yisoid is. So let's chazer over. We have the yisoid of the adam choshev, the oizru is makel. We have any oinis, even a chayla that's not so choshev. We have the Chodesh and the Chofetz Chaim. But when you have a minyan of anusim that need a Sefer Torah, the Bialach is confident to be makel. Before we apply this more specifically, there is one more extremely important tzad to be makel. And that is Marpadava in the Tshuvas Simon Peiches. Marpadava was one of the Kadmoinim, the earliest Achrayim. He has a shaila, and it's a little amusing the way he describes it. It was a situation of tzaddik balir. A gadol came to the city, and they brought a Sefer Torah to his house so he could have a minyan in the house. And he says they ganged up and they hacked the chinik like chickens pecking. How could you bring a Sefer Torah to a yachid's house? So he says, first of all, don't forget this was a real Talmud Chacham, a tzaddik. We have the heta of the Arzarua, the Talmud Chacham. Now he does say when the heta of Talmud Chacham applies only to a real Adam Gadol. A Sheina Yid, an influential Yid, is very nice. He could get Shlishi or Shishi, but that doesn't qualify for the Heta. The Heta has to be a Talmud Chacham and Adam Gadol. And rather, that's why the Bir Hagra, on our halach, we'll soon see, he says, even if you make it by an Adam Choshev, it has to be an Adam Choshev, not just a Sheina Yid. And that's why the Goyin was so machmer, because he held that today we don't have Anoshim Chashuvim, and we don't justify this Heta. But then he adds a different heta, and he says something borally, that the only problem is when you deliver a Sefer Torah for Kriyas HaTorah. For example, you want to make a minyan, so you bring the Sefer Torah, you put it on the bima, you lane, and you bring it back to where it came from. Let's say you bring it yoim or yoimayim before the Kriya, and you put it in a makom mechubed, in a portable or in a kodesh, or even in a respectable closet. But the point is, he says, that if you bring it and you keep it there, we'll soon see what that means. Nobody asks. Not even Ram Rutenberg. Because the issa is the genai of it. You know, I explained it very well. If a person is making a simcha and he rents tables for the simcha, so they bring it a few minutes before, and when he finishes, they take it away because they want to bring it elsewhere, right? That's delivering tables to a simcha is a very nice thing. But you don't deliver a Sefer Torah to a shul. You know, you can deliver a pizza to a pizza party. You don't deliver a Sefer Torah to a shul that you can later bring it back. The bezoyin is it's too heilig to be an item of delivery. But says the Ram Rutenberg, minig shalanu liyached teva v'oren al yoyma yomayim, and you take it out, you make a regular psicha and a regular hitzav achnasa, and you remove it a day or two later, or sometime later, no problem. So therefore, yafa asisa, yafa ereisa, for this godly, you didn't bring it just for laning, you brought it for a few days. Now this Ram Rutenberg is a tremendous, this Ram Padra is tremendous kula. Because more often than not, when you go for a Shabbos in the mountains, you bring it on Friday and take it home on Sunday. The Taz, and the end of our Sim and Kuf Lamed wonders, where do you get this from? But again, it's more of a hergish that it's the Avos delivering it, not bringing it and putting it into the place where you're davening. Lamaisa, the Zoya did not agree to this heta, that's Pashut. And I can't say other Paiskim, all Paiskim agree. The Kafachayim in Sif Katan Pei Gimel writes that like the Zoya, this heta is unacceptable. But listen to the Ramah, where is his kula? On the Mechaber that I told you already twice says you can't bring it even on Rosh Hashanah Kippur. Zok the Ramah b'nei Adam achavushim b'beis asurim. This is the Mechaber Lashon Ein Mavin Eslam Sefer Torah. You feel Rosh Hashanah Kippur. V'hainu Zok the Ramah v'hainu dafke b'shas hakriya levad. Aval machinam lo Sefer Torah yoyma yomayim koydem muta. That's the het of Maram Padava. And then the Rama adds, Imu Adam Chashiv, B'chol Inyan Shari. That's the het of the or Zerua and Agoy Zashri. So the Rama endorses two independent Ateirim. Adam Chashiv is mutter even if you bring it, even a delivery. That's the godless of an Adam Chashiv. But on regular people, the heta is if you bring it Yoma Yamayim before. Now let's apply it specifically, and you'll see how every Yediyah is going to be used. I'll start with the Shaila. Anybody in a yeshiva or a camp knows these Shailas come up, that basically the Hanola says there's one minyan in our camp or yeshiva. There's always people, and I don't want to call them clowns, but maybe they are. They wake up late and they make their own minyan. So of course you're not supposed to, but they do it. But Monday and Thursday, they bring a Sefer Torah to their, outlawed minyan. That's an avla gedola. It's not allowed, so stam it's shol shlai midas. And besides that, that's not Kovod Torah to service a outlawed minyan. You have to lane, so there's a very simple eitzah. Like everybody else does, get up early. But there you see the problem of moving a Sefer Torah that's really a bazoyim for the Sefer Torah, to service your late waking up minyan. Le'idach gisa, you'll see how sensitive the poskim were. We seem to understand, and that's taka the minig, that for Beis Ovel you bring a Sefer Torah. But it's really not pashim. Because Rabbi Yakov has a very strongly worded shtickle, the end of our Kuf Lamed Hey, and he says, Yafa Oisem, what they do in my, Aleph Hey Vav, it's in Altoona, Hamburg, and Wezenbach, but Lamaisa, the minig in his place was that they bring a Sefer Torah to the Ovel's house, Vade Lav Shapi Avid. He says, first of all, they don't treat it properly, they don't keep it in the right place, there are children running around, where you keep it, but what bothers him is that you don't bring a Sefer Torah to someone's home, unless there's an Adam Chashiv. Maybe an Adam Chashiv is mutter, but stam for people, what's the heta? But he brings a Raya L'chayra, the Einel of Tshuva. Because the end of Siman Shin Dalad Mem, that's Hilchas Avelus, it says when a Nasi passes away, so you daven in his house, and there's no laning, because no Sefer Torah in that house. So, what do you see? That the Mechaber held that you don't bring a Sefer Torah to Beis Ovel. Now, it's not such a rahia, because this could be a Mechaber l'shitasei. The Mechaber that we said twice does not allow it for an Oynis, so what didn't maybe for a Nasi. But, the Mechaber doesn't hold of the heta of Adam Chashiv. The Ovel has a Chi of Kriyas HaTorah. Okay, but what could you do? He's an Oynis. The rest of the Tzibah. So then they should do like that's done by Mashal Beis Ovel on Rosh Chodesh. The Ovel doesn't say Hallel, so some have the minute they say Hallel, the Ovel walks out. Some have a minute they go to a shul, they say Hallel afterwards. But that doesn't justify bringing a Sefer Torah. And Taka, the Orchos Chaim, the Spinker quotes Machmirim, as does the Kaf HaChaim and Asifkat Nayin Hey, because this is a bezoyim for the Sefer Torah, even though there's a minyan of Yidden. However, Poik Chazim Ayama Debar. Why is the minig ha'olam justifiable? So for this we have the Ram Padav is heta. Thanks to Mesaskim, Takazachul Latoiv, that there's a Sefer Torah that's brought with an Arna Kodesh in a respectable way, a respectable place. So we have that Eitzah, Ram Padava. Now the Pischei Tshuva, that's the Isserlin, in the end of Kuf Lamed Hey, quotes Tshuva's Binya Simcha. I don't have that Sefer, but he says the same Yisoid. Because Lamaisa, if you have an Adam Chashiv that's sitting Avada, and even if not, but we have an Ovel, and he says Ovel Meisa Beroish, and Ovel has a din of an Adam Chashiv in this respect. Now, Lamaisa, the Raya that he brings from the Mechaber and Shulchan Aruch, Shin Dalet Mem, so if the Kinyan Turn Chelik Dalet Siman Yud Ches, that just wanted to make a statement, because the Nasi was Nifta, we don't lane in his house. But Avada on a regular base Ovel, maybe you'll allowed to bring a Sefer Torah. And Lamaisa, this is Taka the Minig, that Taka you're allowed to bring a Sefer Torah to the base of. Now we'll soon see about the 3 times, but basically that's definitely a het bar. Now the Kinyan Torah in Chelik Dalet Siman Tezayin has another problem, that sometimes people have a Sefer Torah Taka in the shul, but it's not enough of Mahudah, they bring Sefer Torah from a different shul. He says that's wrong. If a Sefer Torah is kosher, maybe Parsha Zocha, there's an Inyan, but Stam, just let us have a Torah for a Hiddur. He says, what's funny is these people were makbid al minig hagra, and they don't know that minig hagra is not to move it even ched l'cheda. So the point is, all agree the starting point is we don't move Sifrei Torah. We go to the Sefer Torah. When there's a real need, an halachic need, then we could bring it. Someone just, a few years ago, we had a Shaila Bachan in our Yeshiva, and Bach was very sick, and they wanted at least Shabbos Parshas Zocher to bring a Sefer Torah to his house, bring a minyan, and lane for him. Once you're there, you might as well lane for him as well, the regular laning and Parshas Zocher. So the truth is, it was Taka Chesed, he was a sick boy, but he wasn't a gadol, and there was no minyan. The Bial Lacha would not allow to bring a Sefer Torah to his house. But I told him, in this case you're allowed to, and it's very simple. Why? Because Parshas Zocher, there's a chiyuv on every yachid. So this would be like a minyan that has a no Sefer Torah. And Taka, you look in the Magen Avram, and Mr. Baruch quotes him in Sifkat Yudalid, that he says that even though we're not makel by a chayla, yachid, to bring a Sefer Torah to his house, but if it's Parshas Zocher, you're allowed to bring a Sefer Torah. Now the emphasis the Magen Avram is makel Parshas Zocher because it's the Raisa. But Libi Yom is another pshat, that's why it's mutter. Because Parshas Zocher for a yachid is like a minyan for laning. There is a halachos chiv on every yachid. And Taka, that's why Mr. Bura is makel, and Taka we told him to could bring the Sefer Torah. They had a heta als the Parshas Zocher, and merely laying the regular laning as well. Now the Kaf HaChaim does write that, like the Zoya, there is no heta even for Parshas Zocher, v'yesh lahachmir. Again, the Svardim and the Shita Mechaba is very machmir in this respect. During COVID, when those made safe minyanim, whatever the word is, but lamaisa, even though there was no existing shul, but there were 10 yidden that wanted to daven, and they did daven, so once they daven to bring the Sefer Torah, would not be much of a shaila, at least certainly not according to the Ramah. Especially when you keep it in a safe place. I heard of 2 stories of Rahman Sefer Torahs were dropped, because people are not used to it. Once they roll off the table. So you have to be very careful whenever you make a minyan at home. I must mention this, people are not used to having a Sefer Torah around. Be very careful to maintain its safety at all times. Interesting shaila, and it was near more than once. A shul had a small minyan and only one Sefer Torah. And now it's Parshas Shkolim, or Rosh Chodesh Shechal B'Shabbos during the summer. They have one bungalow has one Sefer Torah. But now it's Rosh Chodesh B'Shabbos, you need two Sifrei Torah. So if they ask you, what should you do? You could get a Sefer Torah from a different shul, but Shuas Chen. Or maybe this is not a real need. Take the first Sefer Torah lane and then mish it. Especially Shkolim. Sometimes it's just mamash right there, either the end of Ayakel or the end of Tetzaveh, mamash right there. So you might say, and that's Taka the Emes, that there are poiskim that hold. I saw the Nahari Afarsim and Simon Lamed, who says that why not use the same sefer and mish it? It involves a little bit tircha de tzibura that I'm going to have to wait as you mish. So first of all, for a Sefer Torah, it's kedai, but also I have another cheshvan. If you have 2 Sefer Torah, you also have an extra Hag B'Galila. So the time that you use a Hag B'Galila, instead you could mish it. And Taka, there is a school of thought in the Paiskim that say that Taka, for an extra Sefer Torah, mish the first one and leave the other Sefer Torah as it is. Many do borrow a second Sefer, presumably the Saimach Amiram Padava, that if you bring it Yomayim and you put it into a Makam B'Chubit, it's okay. And the Cheshvan is Al Tircha de Tzibur. Now, the emes is, Rashi and Yuma says a psychological insight, and Rashi says, what's the avla of Tircha Tzibura? Because the is mitzapim v'daimimim. They're just waiting and doing nothing. When people are busy, they don't mind the time goes by. When there's a Hag B'Galila, everybody's okay, it's part of it, you're part of Hag B'Galila. But when they start mishing, there's a sigh and a krecht, we have nothing to do with this Hag B'Galila. That's your problem. You should have done it before. Now, they don't know that you couldn't do it before. So the truth is, there's more Tircha Tzibura in mishing a Sefer Torah than Hag B'Galila. So maybe that's the Cheshvan. But Lamaisa, the Divrei Malkiel, in Chela Gimel Simon Dal, it has a different, the bulk of the tshuva was, in the middle of Laning Sefer Torah was found Psul. So Allah Chibov taken another one, but they didn't have another one. So he says it's not so right to say that you continue laning in the Pasula, because we have no other Sefer Torah, you're allowed to lane in that one. If someone wants to get another Sefer Torah, Tircha de Tzibura, but if the Tzib is Moichel, a good idea, bring another Sefer Torah. How do you, and then he throws the mamash in 2 lines. How do you bring a Sefer Torah from a different shul? You're not to bring a Sefer Torah from Makam L'Makam? He says, but Lamaisa, he says, you're bringing it from a place that it's not used to a place that it's used, and certainly you have the fact is that it's being used on the spot. If it's needed, and you're putting it into an Aron HaKodesh, not Yom Yamayim, but you're putting it in Aron HaKodesh, you could rely on bringing it to the other shul. The Kaf HaChaim Sifkot and Pei Beis makes an interesting pshara. If you bring it from another shul to your shul, so then you're really being mavad to the Sefer Torah. Keep it in shul where it belongs. If you bring it from a private house, so right now it's like sort of on vacation, or it's not used. It's a private house. You bring it to a shul, you're being ma'ala Kovod Sefer Torah. So that's a chap. So bring it from a private house is a little better. Now, what's really challenging is Lamaisa, and this happened more than once, there was a bungalow colony that had a problem with the Sefer Torah, and it was taka psul. Now, there was an eitzah of bringing Sefer Torah from a different shul, different minyan, in the same colony, whatever. I'm not talking about it was carrying, or maybe on Yom Tiv, but there was another eitzah. If there's another shul that has a Sefer Torah, and they're going to lane soon, so go to them. Why recreate your Sefer Torah minyan? Go to them. So here the point is that there's an eitzah. And the shaila is maybe the whole tzibah should relocate to that shul. But the truth is, it's definitely a problem of the Kovod HaTzibur that a whole minyan has to join another minyan. So laimi boy, if it's a big minyan, it has to cram into a small minyan. They're just not comfortable. They feel uncomfortable. Maybe they don't get along. Maybe that's the break of minyan of the other's minyan. There are different reasons, but it's just not a Kovod HaTzibur to just tell an oilam just to make a hike. We have to walk 10 minutes to go to another shul. Is that enough to justify bringing a Sefer Torah? So there's a tshuva zera emes chelik aleph lamed zayin. He says by armaisa bedidi havi uvda. We wanted to open the Sefer Torah for Shabbos mincha laning, and the lock was broken. We just couldn't get it open. So instead of telling a guy to break it, he was worried about a malach on Shabbos. He said, we're going to bring a Sefer Torah from a different shul. And he says, because the fact is that to mavatal tmidim kasidra and laning in this shul, and there's an inyan of having a makom kavua, you don't want to daven in the other shul. And he says an interesting point. Besides the tircha de tzibura, he says, but the fact is that you have a minyan, you can't be matriach a minyan to relocate to a different makom. So it's a tzibur that deserves Kovod HaTzibur. I also saw the Kajiglav and Eretz Tzvi Aleph Lamed Ches based on a Rashba that a tzibah has a halacha like an Adam Gadol. And the third Shuva, the Beis Shloima, in the end of Mem Zayin, also says Kovod HaTzibur is like an Adam Gadol. And since there was makel by an Adam Gadol, you makel by a Kovod HaTzibur. Now, Lamaisa, if the Olam is masking to go to the other minyan, it's a good chinuch in Kovod HaSefer Torah, no doubt about it. But if the tzibur is uncomfortable, they won't daven well, and some of them won't even go. They'll just skip davening that day. They'll daven in the bungalow. Avada and Avada. We have Gedolei Yisrael that held that a tzibur has a halacha like an Adam Gadol. The really challenging shayla that I began with is someone wants to go up to the mountains, just peaceful Shabbos, to bring a Sefer Torah. Is that really mutter? So the emes is he definitely has the Rampadava to be Saimachan. He's bringing it Yom Yamayim and he's putting it into the shul, the bungalow colony shul. Wonderful. But the truth is, here, he has another alternative. Stay home. Daven your local shul. The Rampadava allows you to bring a Sefer Torah up to the mountains, and how are you going to get it there? Hopefully someone's going to hold it. You're not going to lay it down in the trunk. You're going to hold it. But for your vacation, is it mutter to bring a Sefer Torah up? It's almost similar to people go on vacation and there's no minyan. So I say, no minyan, I'm honest. So don't go. But the truth is, here is different, because once he does go, he's putting it in Aron HaKodesh. So I didn't find this beferish, but I would say that if there's another minyan available in the area, sometimes there's a yeshiva in the close by, there's another bungalow colony that's having a Shabbos minyan, certainly it's kedai to daven with them. L'chatchila. A few minutes walk is good for Kovod HaTorah. If there's no minyan, I could hear why some are makel, because I want to go for Shabbos, and I'm doing the right thing by transporting it kalacha, yoyma yoymayim. If someone has the shayla, I would advise asking the shaylas chacham, but this is a sticky issue because he's putting himself in a matzav that he has to falazach on the Maram Padava. It's not an existing minyan, he's making the minyan. He's making the minyan and making the need to bring a Sefer Torah. A Talmud Chacham who's sick at home, so we have both heterim, Talmud Chacham and a oinis, and all agree you could bring it just for him. Of course, you have to have a minyan to lane, but we have the heta of the Orzarua and the Goyis Ashri, plus the fact that you're going to put it into an Oren and keep it there for Shabbos. We also have Maram Padava, so that's a simple heta. What's a little more challenging is when we have a tzaddik b'olei air situation. He's staying at someone's house, and it's a big house, and you have a nice basement to daven. Can you bring a Sefer Torah for him to use on Shabbos? So this is really not so pashut, because this is a heta of a Talmud Chacham, but it's not an oinus, because there are the 3 shuls on the block alone. But kvar nahagu lahakol, probably because we falazich on the Orzarua, that Talmud Chacham is a heta, even if he's not an oinus, als Kovod HaTorah. If a person gets a phone call from the hospital, there's a nebach 10 yidden that are anxious to daven Shabbos with a minyan, can you please bring a Sefer Torah to the hospital and we'll have a minyan davening on Shabbos? That we have a heta, first of all, of the bialachis heta, you have a minyan that need it, and also some say even one oinus is enough of a heta to bring a Sefer Torah. If you have just one chayla on Shabbos, so that's taka not so pashut. The Mishnah Berurah is machmir to bring a Sefer Torah, as is the Sha'arei Ephraim. It's the Klal Yisrael's Paisik in Yanei Kriyas HaTorah, in Klal Tes and Simon Mem Gimel, that for an oinus of a yachid is no heta. The only heta is an oinus of a Talmud Chacham. A tricky question, challenging question is the better word, is let's say you have a bigger base medrash and has different minyanim, concurrent minyanim. We'll call them shtiblach. There's a minyan in this side, and the minyan in this room, a minyan upstairs and downstairs, and vuma gate, vuma state is minyanim, which is wonderful. Yidden Kadavan at a very convenient time. The question is there any restriction in moving the Sefer Torah from the big base medrash to the shtibel minyan? You basically bring it for laning and bring it right back. So here we have none of the heterim l'chayra. There's no heter around Padava because you're not parking it in the Aron Kodesh even. It's straight to the bima and back. Here also, if let's say just a regular minyan, there's no Talmidei Chachamim, there's no einsim, you can wait till the next minyan, go to the big shul. But here there's an interesting ha'ara. Maybe the fact that it's tachas gag echad, it's one building, it's one shul, doesn't have a din of shini makim at all. Like in Ilchas Brachos, there's no shini makim in one building. So maybe the whole issa is matal Sefer Torah out of the building to a different location. Maybe we'll call it gag echad in one makim is not considered halachically moving the Sefer Torah. So if you're not moving the Sefer Torah, you don't need a heta of Maram Padava. I'll give you a mashal. Let's say you have a huge beis medrash, and in that beis medrash, to move it from the Aron HaKodesh to the bima is further than moving it from the shul to the small shtibel. The distance is in the big bishul is bigger, but no one asks is moving it in one room, right? So maybe room to room is like one building. So this is not as good as it seems. The Vilna Gaon beferish asid micheda l'cheda. The Zohar Kodesh asid micheda l'cheda. In the Darkei Chayim, I saw this in Kinyan Torah Chelik Dal, Simon Tezayin. He says that the Chaim, the Sanzara, was once a very freezing morning, and the heating did not work in the Beis Medrash. The fire base was not working for some reason. So he said, "Come daven by me," because he lived right off the Beis Medrash. When it came to laning, they wanted to bring Sefer Torah to the Chaim's house, which was really part of the shul. He said, "Nothing doing. I'm going there." And Itaka got a cold and got very sick. But he was happy that he didn't bring his Sefer Torah to his shtibel, even though it was ched l'cheda. And taka, there is a big makam to say that even miched l'ched is also. I guess in one room is mutter, but the truth is the perception is you're delivering the Sefer Torah to another minyan. Now, technically it's under gag echad, but whenever you see them carrying a Sefer Torah down to the basement, they pass the bathroom, they pass the mikveh, it's lacking in Kovod HaTorah, nothing to talk about. Even if you don't pass the bathroom, you just bring in Sefer Torah, for this minyan's convenience. So there's definitely what to be choishish for. And halavai, these shuls would be able to make a system that in every shtibel they have a small Aron Kodesh with a safe, so you could leave it there safely. The problem always is the safe, which is an issue. The Kinyan Torah in Chelik Dal Tazayin says another problem is when they take the Sefer Torah out from the big base medrash, there's a chiyuv deraisa to stand up for the Sefer Torah. Daik for Tishkach, how many people don't stand up? If they don't see, no, it's a halbatzar. But they see them, they love davening, but they have to stand up. So it's definitely very kedai if a person has a few extra dollars and wants to donate a safe, an Aron Kodesh, it's a mitzvah gedola, it's covered at Torah. But I must tell you that there are places that are mekel meched leched. The Beis Shlomo that I mentioned earlier, I saw the Beis Sharim and Simon Menches says any place tachas gag echad is not shinimakim, is not tilde Sefer Torah. And the Mata Yehuda, that's a Gedolei from the Gedolei Svara, the Budayash in Tovkov Peidalet Gimel, says someone asked him, he was a chayla and he lived in the aliyah, in the attic, and the shul was downstairs, and I said you could bring the Sefer Torah to the lane for him, because whenever is Rishus Echad, there's no Issa, there's no Gnai for the Sefer Torah. I guess if it's not Shini Makman Hilchas Brachas, it's not till the Sefer Torah and Hilchas Sefer Torah. Even though, again, the Hergish seems to be bringing it to a different room, especially a different floor, is transporting the Sefer Torah. But one thing I will say, we have the Shaila because, like in the Hamoed, we have different minyanim, and we have with the Tefillah minyan, so it's not so popular. We have our own basement minyan. So I tell them, they do give a Sefer Torah, but don't bring it just for laning and then bring it right back. It's much better and more kavadik. Bring it a little before laning, put it into the safe, put it into the Aron HaKodesh, take it out laning, put it back in the Aron HaKodesh, and after davening, you bring it back upstairs. Now someone asked me, isn't that an effort of futility? You're putting it to Aron and just bring it straight back upstairs where it goes. Teretz says, you're right, misad, without knowing halacha. But to deliver a Sefer Torah onto the bima and back to the Aron is worse than putting it into the Aron, which shows a little bit covered for the Sefer Torah. Agav, I should mention, a lot of places they don't have a proper safe in the Aron HaKodesh, so what they do is they use the Aron HaKodesh. After davening, they will move the Sefer Torah from the Aron HaKodesh into a safe. This I saw, the Har Tzvi and Simon Ayin Aleph and the Tzitz Eliezer Yud Aleph Tezayin, both point to Beferish Gemara and Yuma, that for Shmir, from Erevin, that for Shmira Sefer Torah, there's a heta to move it within a small area. So moving it in a shul, even if you're makbid micheda lecheda, but to move it, to put the Sefer Torah in a proper shmir in a safe, which is besides for Geneva, it's also chalil farfaya. So a Sefer Torah has to be kept properly and safely. Now halavai again, they would have, each shul would have a small safe for the Sefer Torah to keep in that room, and they wouldn't have to move it constantly. The Sambas Chaim and Simon Kofhei says Shaila, which happens often, that there's a minyan 8 o'clock and 8:30, but people came in between and they don't want to wait. Let's make our own minyan. Okay, I'm not getting involved. You're supposed to do that. That breaks the whole, the whole seder of the shul. But to take a Sefer Torah, that's wrong, because that he says wait for the 8:30 minyan. They'll come on time at 8. So that's really using a Sefer Torah for your convenience, and that is tachamachma even micheda lecheda. The point is you have to have a little bit of a hergish of Kol Mechaber Es HaTorah. There was a menhagim, I think there is still, I saw this when I was a child, that on Yom Tovim and Yom Narayim, they would make a laning called Mecheda Sheni, which means they would lane in a different room to push it to be able to make more revenue for the shul, to sell 2 sets of aliyos. Simchas Torah they do Yom Narayim also. So the Mishnah Berurah in Sifkat Memches is not convinced that it's so pashut. The only thing is maybe it's a cover for the shul to make a few extra dollars. But the Chashulchan, in the end of our simon, he says people do it on Yom Narayim, Yom Kadoshim, Rosh Hashanah, Kippur, and Simchas Torah. They're going to have to give it in the Cheshvan for that. So even for generating income for the shul is not pashut. Now the minig tak is to do it, but basically that's because you could also rely on Miched L'Ched is not a problem. The point is to heighten our sensitivity to this is a Sefer Torah. We don't schlep a Sefer Torah. Rabbi Moshe had in Chelik Yardei Beis Al-Galef a bizarre question, but this is typical of American life in those days. There was a shul that had chuppahs in the shul, which is already one strike against them, because that's not lefi ruchenu to have a chuppah in Beis Medrash. But there wasn't enough room for the guests, so they devised a automatic that you press a button and the Aron HaKodesh goes down to the basement. Like press a button to rid of the Aron, chas v'shalom, press 1. Then you press another button and the bima went down to the basement. So, so Moshe says, how can you do that? I mean, even if the chuppah is held la'alacha, which it wasn't, but what about our Shulchan Aruch? Can't move a Sefer Torah. And with the Aron HaKodesh in it, on top, around it, there's no better. This is a colossal bizayon, and to send it down is worse. And even if it was done, even if the chuppah is done b'tznius and b'kedusha, it's still awesome. But the point is, I hope no one thinks of this, but I wonder why no one thought of this. Why don't some people have idea to put the Aron HaKodesh on wheels and move it out when you need it? The answer is, that's the problem. Sefer Torah on wheels, Aron HaKodesh on wheels, is as bad as it sounds, if not worse. And even if it's in the Aron HaKodesh, you're still moving the Sefer Torah. So I might think, you can't move the Sefer Torah, but in the Aron HaKodesh, so don't even think of it, it is absolutely keneged halacha. I once went to a chasana, I was with one of the Bachim in the yeshiva, flew me to a chasana, a few other rabbanim, and the next morning we had a problem because we had to daven, and we couldn't catch any minyan in the area. So he was a Rebbe, he says, don't worry. He says, whenever he travels, he brings with him a private Sefer Torah. So at the time I didn't know the sugya, but the truth is this is probably a Pharisee Gemara. That even though we don't move Sifrei Torah on a regular basis, but a private Sefer Torah, you're allowed to move. The Gemara in Yuma Daf Ayin, to marvel the Gemara, because it's really 2 halachos that we learn from this. In Yom Kippur, after they laned, Zok Gemara in the Lashon Gemara, V'acha kol echad v'echad maybe Sefer Torah mi beisai v'koirabai. After the laning of the Kohen Gadol, they brought their own Sefer Torah. Don't forget, in those days, everybody had Sefer Torah. Why did they lane? They already laned. Rashi says, to show the beauty of the Sefer Torah, zekeli v'anveyu. I don't want to call it a show and tell, but that's what it was. They brought a Sefer Torah from the house and they laned. So the Gemara, Rashi discusses it wasn't a problem of carrying. Zokt Rabbi Yosef Chaim in Tshuvas Torah Lishma Siman Nun Ches. What about the Yisra moving a Sefer Torah? Everybody did it on the Helix the Tog Yom Kippur. Don't forget, Ram Rutenberg asked it on Yom Kippur. So he says that the only Issa is when you're moving the Sefer Torah where it has a place. So by moving it, you're putting it into Gullus. But if it has no place, it's your place in your private, in your home, that's not called Gullus. And also you're bringing it from a private home to the Beis HaMikdash, that's elevating its status. And as the Makari says, a Sefer Torah of Yachid is Mutter, he brings the Gemara in Yuma that I just mentioned, a Daf Ayin. And that's Taka, the Poskim say that there is a special heta of a private Sefer Torah. The Munkachadak, Chaim B'Shalom, Reishid Beis, recorded he had his own Sefer Torah that he brought with him. Now they also make, for convenience and also for Kovod Sefer Torah, there's a travel case, a Aron HaKodesh that's designed to be practical. But the truth is, this is what's done. I know in our yeshiva, there's one of the Cheshvan Balabatim that learn half a day, and Tainus, you notice he comes with a briefcase, but not a briefcase. It's a small, like Aron HaKodesh, that he brings it to his office in Manhattan to daven mincha by aliyos, and he brings his private Sefer Torah to his office when he needs it. He first comes to yeshiva, then he goes to... So this is the heta of a private Sefer Torah. Now, what I didn't notice, what I didn't point out yet, is whenever is a heta, L'mashal Beis Oval or the bungalow colony, is there an only mutta if you lane 3 times in it? People are convinced that's one of their seres adibris. You must lane 3 times to justify bringing a Sefer Torah. And the problem is by a Beis Oval, typically there's no 3 times. And a weekend Shabbos, there's no 3 times. So the emes we learned, Abavli, Yerushalmi, Rishonim, no one says 3 times. Truth is, why is 3 times the Machriya? If it's a Bazayan, even once. And if it's not a Bazayan, even 10 times. Forget it. If it's a Bazayan, then right away, there's no heta. You have to come on to 3. Why is 3 times mutter? So the Maisa, the Chazaka to do an Issa doesn't sound like a heta. Your Machzik to do an Issa. So the Aruch HaShulchan, to my knowledge, the first one that writes this in Sif Lamed Beis, minutely dakdik that you lane 3 times in it, because then it has a kfiyus in that place. So it's not a chazaka of doing the issa, it's giving it a kfiyus in that place. Now Lamaisa, what's interesting is, no one else says this. Fakert, Rav Shnei Bezalman, Alichas Shloima, Hilchas Pesach, Yud Gimel or 11, he says there are 3 things that people say with the number 3 and they're all wrong. Number one is that people say you have to lay in 3 times in a Sefer Torah. That's wrong. Number 2, that you have to fast 3 times before your bar mitzvah. And number 3, that you have to wash your hands 3 times before mincha or ma'ariv with a keli. Once is enough. Okay. But what's interesting is Rabbi Yakov in Emes Yakov Kuf Lamanei, or Moshe in Chelik Dalas HaMachalaf Yud Gimel, and Rabbi Yashav and Yisa Yosef Chelik Beis all say there's no chiyuv to lay in 3 times, but if that's the minig, then we do that. And that is an important Kol Mechaber HaTorah understanding. There's no such chiyuv, but people are Moshe Nefesh. We'll see by Beis Avil, they make a mincha Shabbos to lay. They'll make 2 minyanim if they need be on Shabbos, 2 extra, just to lay in 3 times. This reminds me of what I saw once. I tell you, they say they asked the Chazon Ish, "Vu state that Giyas Bonim is awesome." So you open the shirt, it says, "Of mine heart status." Of the Yiddish heart status, Kol Mechaber HaTorah. The Chavetz Chaim Kamat never writes a story about himself. But if you look at Be'alocha Siman Pei Gimel, it's a Shrekl Chamaisa, but he says, Ra Alai Hamaisa. And the first time I saw him saying about me, he says there was one person who obviously was a Talmud Chacham because he had a lot of Svarim. But pardon me, he kept his potty, what they needed for Beis HaKisei, in the Svarim room. And I warned him, Kol Mechalas HaTorah, Guf Mechol HaBriyos. But he ignored me and he continued learning. And he got his due punishment. His son went off the derech. Miniskayim by what the Mishnah says, Kol Mechalas HaTorah, Guf Mechol HaBriyos. Up to Moifez or Chavetz Chaim. But the sensitivity is that we're dealing with the Midah Toiva or Mechaber HaTorah. And that's why when you do have a heter to bring a Sefer Torah, you have to bring it up, transport it properly. Hold it keneged alei, like the Shulchan Aruch says, not to lay it down in a trunk. And there's, you could say kiss b'soich kiss, you'll wrap up azoi. Sefer Torah has to be carried properly. Where to keep it? Keep it in a proper place. Keep it in a portable urn if possible. In a closet that's respectable. Never lay a Sefer Torah on the table. These things roll off. There are children running around, especially in a base oval. It's hectic. You have to keep it better in a place where you could close the door and keep it in safety. The minig is to wrap a Sefer Torah with a talis when you transport it. Now, to my knowledge, it does not say in any place in halacha, but pasha, I guess it is another covering. But I think it's also called kfuda bas melech pnima. Try to maintain as much as you can the tznius, the flayul of them. Keep it wrapped up. It shouldn't be exposed. And the last group of questions, which is really fascinating, someone was by a chanas Sefer Torah, and he said they didn't bring out from the shul the other Sefer Torah to greet the new one. He thought that was a violation of Kol Torah Kula. The emes is the Shar Ephraim in Tes Mem Vav, right? You're not to bring a Sefer Torah out of the shul to greet other Sifrei Torah. Rabbi Yashiv used to fezach like that. You could bring it to the door, but no more. But Lamaisa Poik Chazim Ayama Debar, and Rabbi, we know the pshat. Because here we come to the Gemara and Yuma from a different angle. In Yuma Daf Ayin, the Gemara records that everybody brought their Sefer Torah to show off its beauty. Question, bring a Sefer Torah, not even for the laning, just to show off? So apparently, we see from this Gemara, and a number of points can point this out, a second lesson. Besides the heta of private Sefer Torah that we learned, we see that Kovod Torah justifies tiltul Sefer Torah. Now, the rational person might wonder, I can't bring a Sefer Torah to help a chol in the hospital, unless it's a minyan. But I could bring it for Kovod Torah. The answer is yes. Because the Gemara Megillah says the Kovod Torah is more than Torah. So this is what the Paiskim say, explains the minig of the chanas, of those that bring out all Sifrei Torah to the street to greet the new Sefer Torah. This explains the minig b'soich Klal Yisrael of Kafas Simchas Torah. We are mekel in many inyanei kvayda Sefer Torah. I'm almost v'ef shlefartam. But as I saw the Kinyan Torah quotes his Zayda, the Pischei Zuta, he said very, I guess, sarcastically, we could say, Mada Aser Achmana Sharila Kavase. Because the chumras regarding Kavas Sefer Torah are almost unimaginable. But Sekum Simchas Torah and come out like I wouldn't say hefgewelt, but come out like a hefgewelt. So it's something interesting. But don't forget what the Aruch HaShulchan warns: don't overstep the boundary. He says don't make a cheder sheni when not necessary on Simchas Torah. So Chalil, to say it's a hefgewelt, I could say is basically that the point is that when we have a cover of the Sefer Torah, That's more mutter. In fact, Rabbi Yakov Emden Markatzia says something exquisite. He says we see from the Bavli allowed to bring a Sefer Torah to show off. Our sugya. So maybe it's a machlokes Bavli and Yushalmi. Yushalmi says you're not allowed to bring a Sefer Torah ever, and Bavli is Mekel, goes chas v'shalom. It's not a machlokes Bavli. Everybody holds it's awesome. The only heta is when you have a tzoyrich, which of course explains why you're allowed to bring a Sefer Torah to a Sefer to correct it. Because that's tzoyrich Sefer Torah. But let me just leave with this point. We should be focusing on what's really the state of the Yiddish hearts. Kol mechaber es ha-Torah, gufay mechuber al ha-briyas. A good talk to you all.
That are retained by the visuals.
Shem Irgen Shir Torah, like a big Yashikoyach to Smith for today's share. To have the great source of sponsoring a share, call Irgen Shir Torah 718-851-8651 or email ist@yeshivanet.com. Bez Hashem after Kaddish, or Smith will say a sikum for 5 minutes of today's share. Panani ben Akash Shemanos Kadosh Baruch Hu Lezakes is Yisrael v'Yibram Torah Mitzvah Shenema al Nechofes Man Tzidki Yaglu Taviyada.
Amen. Yehei Shnei Rabba Mivarach L'olam Yom Hayo. Amen. Hey. I'll answer your question now.
Keep it by the same. Okay. Well, we put back to Sefer Torah. We'll say the Sikkim today's share. Kovod Sefer Torah.
Just let's review what we learned today before, we learned, I think the most important thing is Kol mechaber es ha-Torah. Remember that the Sefer Torah is the Eid Nem L'Chol Bei Olam. That klaf is not just regular klaf, that's mamish the billions of hours of Yiddish mitzvahs and Torah and Mesiras Nefesh and everything. So step number 1 is Kol mechaber es ha-Torah. The more mechaber the Torah, keneged alev, the better off we are. And that led many poskim to believe that moving a Sefer Torah across the board is a bezoyin that should not be done. That's some shittas, even halacha, even b'makam oynis. Because you go to the Sefer Torah, it doesn't come to you. If the person is an oynis, so he's potter. Shulchan Aruch is machmir, the Zoy is machmir, the Ramah is mekel, and that's taka the minig. When you have a oynis, Talmud Chacham, you could zicher bring the Sefer Torah, and the understanding is that's the covet for the Sefer Torah that allows it. There's an additional heta Maram Padava that even if it's not a Talmud Chacham, but the mere fact that you put the Sefer Torah for Yoim HaYomayim, and I forgot to mention, Yoim HaYomayim basically means Lachatchila for 2 days. If it can't be at least Yoim, that at least has to be at least a day. Not just to deliver it and take it back, but you put it in the Arna Kodesh before Shabbos, take it home after Shabbos, keep it in a respectable place. But basically, there are 2 major heterim. One is for a Talmud Chacham. We'll soon see maybe a tzibur. Some hold for a minyan of oinsim, even not Talmud Chacham. And Rampadav is a more broad heta when the Sefer Torah is brought Yoim HaYomayim to a Makkah Mechubit. When people sleep late or stam for convenience, just make another minyan, a break-off minyan. That doesn't justify till the Sefer Torah. The base oval, the minig is they do bring a Sefer Torah. And you don't dafka have to lay in 3 times. The ikki is put it in a makam mechubed, a safe place. Remember, the Avelim are not watching the Sefer Torah at all times. It has to be safe besides being mechubed. When you have a question of a yachid for Parashat Zacha, that is a chiyuv on the yachid. You could bring the Sefer Torah to him as well. To make a minyan time, let's say like during COVID or the like, when you need a minyan, when you have a minyan, you want to bring a Sefer Torah, that's mutter. Because there's an existing chiyuv, you have to be a halachos heter of a minyan. If there's 1 Sefer Torah, so you bring another one when you need 2 Sifrei Torah. Depends on the situation, but if it's not much of a tircha tzibura, it might be gedai to mish and not bring another Sefer Torah. If there is a tircha tzibura or the tzibur wants to do things in a way as I should stay, 2 Sifrei Torah, there's a makam lahakol based on around padava. A Sefer Torah that's psul If you could go to another minyan and hear laning, that's definitely better. That's Kovod HaTorah. If the tzibah is uncomfortable, you might lose some of the people on the way, then you could bring the Sefer Torah to the minyan. If you go off for Shabbos, is very not pashut. I would advise asking a Shelas Chacham, but certainly if you could lane elsewhere, that's preferable. For a sick Talmud Chacham, it's mutter. Even for a Yachid Talmud Chacham, if a tzaddik balei situation is not pashut, because it's only for it's a tzaddik which is not a question of an oynis. The het is man padava. An oynis Yachid is not kedai to bring a Sefer Torah unless and there's a minyan in the hospital already. From cheder lecheder or different floors, miyikidin is mutter. Halavai, we would avoid that and avoid the tiltal Sefer Torah that sometimes comes across as a bazayin. It's always important to try to keep a Sefer Torah in an aron with a safe as the safety of it, but basically avoid when you have to move a Sefer Torah, don't just deliver it and put it back. Put it in the Aron Kodesh, make a regular proper hitzav achnasa, and then bring it back. A cheder sheni to generate more income for the shul, the Welt is mekel, but it should be, of course, should be done in a proper place where the Sefer Torah is kept before the laning and after the laning as well. Moving an Aron Kodesh does not help with the Sefer Torah in it. You don't move around Aron Kodesh. A private Sefer Torah. Now, somebody asked me a good question. I meant private Sefer Torah. They keeps it in his house. It wasn't kaina makom, and it's not designated for use. Everybody that writes Sefer Torah gives it to the shul on a loan. If you donate it to the shul, you lost the mitzvah. But that's not a private Sefer Torah. That's a shul Sefer Torah that has the use of it, and it has a makom. So they had to only buy a private Sefer Torah that the person, for whatever reason, keeps it at home. To keep the Sefer Torah in a makom mechubar also is always the halacha, transporting it properly, holding it, and giving it the right derech eretz. And of course, if there's going up, it shouldn't be music that's inappropriate. When the Sefer Torah is there, it's understandable. Kovod Sefer Torah, there's a special heta for Kovod Sefer Torah, Achnasa Sefer Torah, Akafah Simchas Torah, Tikkun Sefer Torah, but the ikka is when it's not necessary, Kol Mechaber Sefer Torah, Guf Mechaber Alabris. So there's a steer. The Gemara says, he's asking good kasha, but it's a steer. Because Maka says,